What's up, everybody? Welcome. It's an extended edition of Soapbox Sunday. We are going to be chatting it up. I'm so excited. I see my friend Anthony. What's up, man? I enjoyed you last night. You and the guys. We had a good time. Stay tuned. I'll be talking about that today, too. All right, you guys are getting on in here. Get on in here. Tell your friends. Share. Let everybody know that Soapbox Sunday is up and running on this 17th day of October. My little connection issues. What's going on here? Hey, guys. I see you getting on in here. Trickling on in. I may have to let the thingies go a little bit longer than normal, but we will see. What's up, Mr. Cunningham? I see you. Indeed, one of my guests is on. I'm assuming Joy will be jumping up. There's Joy. Oh my God, you guys are already here. That's it. Hey, what's up, Deborah? How you feeling, sweetie? Are you good? I know you were kind of battling, but I prayed for your healing, and I'm sure you'll come out fine. Indeed, folks, it's an extended hour of hot topics. We are covering it all. No shortage of opinions on this particular show. And we all don't agree. But it makes for an even more exciting and interesting and compelling. Yes, indeed. Let's hope Instagram Live doesn't act up on us today. I tell you, it misbehaves on us sometimes. Hit share. Tell your friends that we're all on. A lot of my friends watch this in replay, but I'd like them to watch it in real time so I can get that instant reaction. Those TikTokable. Indeed. You guys had good weeks? It's been a really nice week out here in LA. The weather was pleasant. What's up, Thomas? I see ya. Thomas. He's one of my dedicated audience members. I always appreciate seeing him on here. All right, folks. It's going to be 3 of us on here. I'm so excited. It's a panel, round table. We're all chatting it up. A old staple, Miss Joy. You guys know her. All right, folks. Welcome to Soapbox Sunday. I am Jermaine Taylor. Folks, if water cooler culture was, say that a million times, if water cooler culture was still a thing and deemed CDC friendly, I am certain that we would never get any work done. There is no shortage of opinions on everything that keeps buzzing nowadays. I mean, there is so much going on. Our phones are always, our alerts are always going on. There's always breaking news. So there's no shortage of opinions. So in true Soapbox Sunday fashion, I'm bringing you have access to 2 of the most out-of-the-box thinkers, and they agreed to say yes and join me for this extended hour of Soapbox Sunday. You see them every Friday night on Still Sharp and Still on Facebook Live. Welcome, Joy Stevens and Thomas Cunningham IV. Let me add them on, guys. Give me a second. They are jumping on here. Let's see how this is going to fan out. Joy and Thomas are jumping on the soapbox.
Hello.
Hello.
Let's see here. Do you guys see them? Send me a word.
Tom, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think what I can't see is there he is.
There you guys go. Look at you. I am always on the fence about this thing because it's like sometimes it just doesn't work out and sometimes it works out perfectly. Today it did. Look at all this beautifulness on my screen this morning or this afternoon. How are you guys doing?
We are well. I know I'm well, and I'm so pleased to be invited to be a participant in the show. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I am too. Enjoy. How you doing out there in the ATL, girl? You holding it down?
I am doing wonderful. I am excited to be back out here on Soapbox Sunday. You know, I love spending time with you. Look, it's homecoming weekend out here. I'm like, y'all be good, get home safe. I got something to do.
You mean I pulled you away from the festivities?
No, you didn't. You didn't.
I was about to say, ain't no festivities at Spell House this year. They're keeping it real safe.
I
Yo,
think I've aged out of it myself, folks. I can't even
right?
lie to you.
Yo, man, my feet cannot handle them high heel shoes in the grass. Trying to use my knees, looking like a baby bird, trying to get through the. No, that ain't me no more.
The
That
last
ain't me no more.
time I even went to the Red River Classic, you know, I went to UT, and OU and UT plays every year this time of the year. The last time I went, I think I was in my mid-30s. And when I tell you, I felt the age of an old 60-something-year-old man by the time I was done. I couldn't keep up. And I tried to do the whole thing, like go to the fair. That's how we do it in Texas. We go to the fair, then we go to the game, then the after parties. By the time I got to the first quarter of the game, it was done.
You know, I didn't know you went to UT.
Yes.
You might know my cousin if you may be a little younger than him, but Julius Whittier is my cousin. They just dedicated a statue to him in front of the stadium.
That's what I was getting ready to say. I said, I know something's kind of trending about that name. Oh my God, look at you. I didn't know I had access to such legacy on my show.
Yeah, that's my mother's first cousin.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you guys are trailblazing down there in Texas. Get out of here.
Oh yeah, we do it. I was born in Beaumont, Texas, so
Yeah, I saw that on your bio. Wonderful.
yeah,
Enjoy
we've been
your
doing it.
Houstonian.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
Oh, it's all Texas up in here today.
Even better, folks. It makes for an even better conversation. Folks, let's get to it. It's an extended hour, and I just want to jump right into it.
Mm-hmm.
Cancel culture.
Yes.
Here we go.
Is it still a thing? Is it still effective? Are we trying to just squeeze the last little juice we can out of it before we put it away like woke, you know? Or, you know, because woke is just totally done anymore. It's null and void. Or does it still hold value? The threat of it, does it still make people feel somewhat accountable when they know they're threatened? You know, because it can affect your livelihood, your economy. It can affect your capitalism. So where is it right now? Are we losing the gravitas of it? Or is it just something people are just waxing out there just to, you know, trend hashtag for yet another 3 days and it's over? I'll go with you, Thomas. What are you thinking?
Well, I think this week, John Gruden was probably a good example of how accountability was made manifest in his immediate termination. And I think that's a byproduct of at least the notion of cancel culture. I have felt every time I watch somebody get canceled, from the lowliest employee at some local insurance company who decided they were going to break wild on their Facebook page, to a high-ranking media figure like Gruden, I keep saying this is going to be the one that's going to transform people's behavior, and yet it has never happened. So I think even if the threat of cancel culture isn't modifying behavior, the consequences of cancel culture are modifying people's pocketbooks, to your point. And so I think that there is still some value in it, because until this culture holds accountability for the legacy of its racist past, its misogynistic past, its anti-LGBTQ plus past, all of those things that continue to be ongoing challenges for our culture and society should be addressed with consequences. And when people start feeling the consequences most acutely, I think we will actually begin to see the burgeoning shoots of change coming through in this country.
Joy?
So similar to what Tom is saying, cancel culture, the phrase cancel culture implies that there's something negative about it. Like, oh, they're trying to cancel me. Oh, you cancel, blah, blah, blah. And it seems as if it is a weapon to be indiscriminately used. You know, I'm going to cancel this is cancel, blah, blah, blah. Accountability. And I love LeVar Burton for putting it like this. I think he was the first one, at least first one I heard to say it. There's accountability culture that is being put forth now. We're going to hold you accountable for what you did, which means there are varying levels to things. There's some things we hold you accountable, and it is, relatively speaking, you know, a slap on the wrist. You did bad, do better. We saw you. We're not going to let you go next time. You know, then there is, okay, you deserve to lose your job for the stuff you did, because your job impacts what other people do. Either you have a platform that is so big that we can't allow you to continue to spew this on your platform, or you have a job that is so big. You are the vice president of a bank that does home loans. We can't allow you to continue to hire people like you to continue to deny loans to other people like these marginalized communities. So, you can't keep this job because you don't know how to act. You know, now if you're a bus driver, you violating the code of conduct, you're going to lose your job too. So there's a lot of different levels of accountability for your actions. Once you've atoned for that, similar to Michael Vick murdering dogs and going to jail. Once you've atoned and you've paid your dues, all right, rehab, you know, come back into society, prove you've done better and done different. I'm willing to let people come back into society. I don't think people should lose their livelihood forever. You got to show me you're different, though.
Right.
You know, I'm not letting Michael Vick watch my dog anytime soon. You know, but similar to that, you know, this idea of cancel forever, I think needs to be examined. But I also think you can't just say, well, we can't cancel them because there are levels. You ain't got to be canceled forever, but you got to show me that you know you did wrong.
Well, generally, when Black folks cancel you, we have given you 11 chances to get it right.
Right, and that's
you know
the other thing.
Because it's a lot of us that still don't see nothing wrong with a little bump and grind.
That's not my ministry.
Now, I want to talk
not for
about
20
that.
years.
I want to talk about that for a second.
But I'm not kidding you. I mean, what he did was, I mean, unthinkable. And I can't never wrap myself around it. But there's a lot of us in the culture that are still bumping to the brother's music. Take Michael Jackson. When he was lightening his skin, we rolled with the brother, kept coming up with excuses, but we never canceled him. We just kept giving him chance after chance. And I feel like with us, we understand the path to where they are, and it was so hard fought. We just want to make sure they are just not at all redeemable before we're like, you know what, go away.
Now, that's another problem. That's another problem. And I talk about this a lot in the work that I do, this idea of binary thinking. And I think I've talked about this on your show before, too, where if someone is good, they're all good. And if someone is bad, they're all bad. And we have trouble, human beings, because I'll give it to, is one of the reasons that this country itself cannot reconcile with its own past. Because if you're good, if you're a hero, if you're an icon, if you're a megastar, if you're America's father, right, then you're good, right? You're good. You're a good person. And the idea that you've done something so reprehensible, so heinous, right, so SUV or SVU, I can't get with that. People can't put those two things together in one body. And so they either have to ignore that you did bad, well, that's okay. Well, this is said, oh, he was trying to buy NBC or blah, 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 whatever. Or they have to cancel you completely. You can't have it both ways. They can't say this person, you know, I'm using Bill Cosby example. This person did a lot of good for HBCUs, had a great character, great fictional father on television because that was a character. He was also a serial date rapist and abuser of women. That exists in the same person. You know, we struggle with that because we want to have heroes and villains. And we never get to see the villain be a hero, have any redeeming qualities. You're supposed to be a white hat or a black hat. It's one of the reasons that Marvel's cinematic universe is so good, because they present us with villains that have redeeming qualities.
Exactly.
Some people look at Killmonger and say, he kind of got a point. Remember how much we argued about that on the internet?
Yes.
Because people could see the humanity in the villain. And it's something that you hadn't really seen before. He wasn't just a black hat. Same thing with Thanos. People were like, well, I mean, it's genocide, but, you know, so all of that plays into us not wanting to see our heroes. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, founding fathers. They don't want to see their heroes as anything but heroes. To add any villainy to them is to negate it all. And we struggle with that as human beings. Every person, regardless of country, struggles with that. And so that's why cancel culture is always seen as a negative, because, well, I got to cancel it all. No, you can remember that they did good things, but you can't forget that they did some bullshit too. You know? But
Thomas, do you think it was frivolously used in regards to what Chappelle is going through right now? Do you feel like that employee at Netflix just went out on the limb, just throwing it out there because she felt hurt? Or was it a justifiable threat that she threw at him? Because I feel like that's when it sort of kind of weighs it. It kind of takes the weight out of it when you throw it out like that.
Well, I think, first of all, David Chappelle is a nuanced and layered artist. Those of us who encountered him as an early young stand-up, where he was literally just doing jokes, like even his bits in The Nutty Professor, that David Chappelle was just a joke guy. But over the years, even starting with the Chappelle Show, we saw that he was introducing a whole lot of social commentary and a whole lot of really challenging themes in his work. And when he decided that that work was not representing his perception of the culture in a way that was appropriate to him, he walked away from a huge deal and was kind of in the weeds for you know, about a decade. When he came back and came back strong, one of the things that really pressed me about this special and the specials that kind of bookended the George Floyd special was that he was clearly tackling themes beyond just jokes, and he was using humor as the lever. And one of the things that I think was lost in kind of the discussion about canceling him around this topic was that he was really pointedly looking at white people. He explicitly said, the only thing I'm against is white people. And then you see this trans white employee, and, you know, any person of any experience is free to feel a way and feel how they want to feel in a moment.
Your feelings are valid.
Your feelings are valid. But my challenge is that your feelings don't also make the truth of a person's character. You may feel a certain way, but if you sat there and looked at that entire special as a white trans woman and didn't think that the last 15 minutes that he spent on it eulogizing and celebrating his friend for whom he gave the best opportunity of her life to stand up and open for arguably the best comedian working today. He's Dick Gregory with $200 million, people. He's not just a guy. He is Lenny Bruce with $200 million. And so he has the freedom to do and say some things that some of his predecessors did not. So I think she was frivolous. I think those people who decided they were going to leak the $24 million that he got for that special, or that was paid for that special, were in the wrong, and they have been terminated. Again, feel how you want to feel, but just because you feel that doesn't mean that you know a person and can cast what are considered to be absolutely correct aspersions about a person's character because you feel a way in a moment. And that was
she seemed really trigger happy at that point. I was like,
well, but again, he started off the whole thing, and people have posted memes since. How many times did he say the N-word in the 3 or 4 seasons of Chappelle's show? And not nary a person from any other community got up and said, oh, he needs to be stopped. They were trying to pay him to continue that. And yet, in these last couple of specials where he has tried to make a point about the complementarity between the issue of canceling Black people literally and physically through anti-Black state-sponsored violence versus people feeling that they have been impugned in some way by something that he has said, those are two very different things. And we need to be present as Black people, I think. Not saying you have to support David or you don't have to support David. That is your prerogative. But I don't think it's appropriate for us to co-sign on what I think was a real hot take from a particular person who wanted to jump out in front and say, well, I work for Netflix and I felt it was bad. Okay, girl, I thought your show running of the last 2 seasons of Dear White People was bad. So what? Yeah.
You could tell she took a slice of a conversation and made it the entire story.
And it was not.
Yeah, exactly.
I also saw several think pieces come out, and in the article they're like, and I cut it off halfway and I couldn't even watch the rest. Then you shouldn't be commenting.
You shouldn't be commenting on
it. Exactly.
You didn't watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right? If I had cut it off
halfway
through,
maybe just the headline. They ran with that. I don't even know people who actually even watched it. A lot of
people. Oh yeah, no, they saw the clip, they saw the sound bite, they saw the quote, and they said, "Oh, this is absolutely horrible."
They saw the beet juice joke.
Yeah, the beet juice. And look, I didn't think every joke or commentary landed, but I have to look at, I personally have to look at Chappelle in the context. Anybody who thinks that the Dave Chappelle that did that George Floyd 8 minutes and 46 seconds special is not worthy of being in a conversation about broader topics, I think is missing a big point. That special was incendiary, and it was filled with rage and anger and pushback and fight against what we are facing as Black people. And you follow that up with a statement that indicates the baby shot because there's a lot of babies out there in hip hop. DaBaby was involved in a shooting that killed a Black man in Walmart, and nothing happened to him. Yeah. And yet he got up on stage, and I didn't like what he said on stage either. But what immediately happened, from Dua Lipa cutting him out of her singles, which was a charted single at the moment, to everything else that happened. And again, actions have consequences. You ain't got to say everything that comes into your little brain to baby or anybody else. And so the marketplace spoke, fine. But Dave really is not pressed about that particular person.
Yeah.
And he appears not to be pressed about the overall backlash, although I think he is sensitive to trying to start and engage in a conversation that I think is important, especially as it pertains to the impacts on Black people versus other populations that receive greater protection, even though our historical oppression is so much deeper and so much longer standing.
And that's the rub. Go ahead, Joy.
I mean, just to end that on a nice bookend, you got to look at the fact that the sitting Congress was able to pass an anti-Asian hate crime bill.
Right.
And we've been trying to get an anti-lynching bill for literally decades.
That's the subtext of our disappointment. That's the subtext of our pushback. It's like, wait a minute, we're still oppressed here. You guys can say this, and all of a sudden there's legislation that's going to back you up. We can't even get you guys to agree not to hang us from trees. Come on now.
And we can't even get you to agree to let us vote.
Yeah.
Can we be clear? Can we be
there's
clear?
A lot that's built into our pushback on that. On the same line, I'm going to kick this one to you, Joy. Is it just me, or do we have two different definitions of racism out there? One of you guys mentioned Gruden. And oftentimes when someone either gets caught in a racist act, or caught on a hot mic saying a racist thing, or caught sending a racist email, their first line of rebuttal is, I'm not a racist. Help me out. So do we see racism as two different things when it comes to like Black folks? Does it have to be highly inflammatory in order for them to see it as racism? Or where is the disconnect there? Because that is like the first line of defense you always hear, and then they start trickling down all the reasons why they're not. Joy, what do you say to that?
First off, I want to give a shout out to Ryan Ken on Twitter, because Ryan Ken is an actor. I love him to death. And he gave the perfect, it came out, and he did this little skit after the Oprah Winfrey interview with Meghan Harry, right? Yeah. And he was talking about how white people see it. He goes, you keep talking about, sometimes there's like a oops racism, and then there's like a racism. And y'all keep confusing the two. I know when I mean oops and when I mean And he goes, y'all seem to not catch the difference. And he was speaking as a white person. And so they absolutely think that there's a difference to us between, oops, I didn't give you a home because of this loan, and I hung you from a tree. They're all racism to us.
And look.
And so they like to say, matter of fact, they look at, I use this iceberg symbology in the classes that I teach all the time. They think racism is strictly the N-word, the KKK, and like the Proud Boys. That's racism. Anything as, I don't want you dating my daughter, or I just would prefer not to live here.
Those are values.
Right. Or traditional, family values. I'm a good Christian. I'm an American. Where are you from? Anything like, I would just, not in my backyard. This is a sketchy neighborhood. None of that is racism to them. It's only racism if they use the N-word while they're hanging you from a tree in South Carolina or Alabama specifically. Other than that, it's not. And so for them, if it's not a violent act, intentionally done, they don't count it. Whereas for me, if you just threw my resume out because you saw my picture, that's still racism to me.
Yeah.
And let's be absolutely clear, because I agree with you, Joy, and Jermaine. For most people who think about racism, if they're not holding a torch and literally setting your shirt on fire while you're in it, they don't consider it to be racism. But I'm going to push back against Joy, because we are literally playing out a case with Ahmaud Arbery where 3 white people chased a Black man and shot him in the street, and they are saying they're not racist.
Yes. Yeah.
You can't even depend on the threshold of killing a Black man to be racist, because now you're trying to say, oh, well, they were just trying to protect this, that, and the third. And luckily, the judge in that case has really been slapping the taste out of the defense's mouth on entry of mental health, entry of prior bad acts, all of these things that they were hoping they were going to be able to use to smear and besmirch the character of Ahmaud Arbery. They are now getting stuck with a case where it looks like you got 3 white men that chased a Black man. They were driving in a truck with the old Georgia flag, which has the Confederate symbol on it.
Yeah.
They had loaded shotguns, cornered him. One guy was literally filming everything that happened. And you're still trying to say it wasn't racist. And so
Sure.
that's where we are in terms of racism in this country, where the presently, for a short time longer, majority population is feeling that they can completely control the narrative. And I will say this, CRT and the notion that CRT, which A, is not even being taught in K through 12 schools because it's an advanced theoretical construct that is best dealt with in college, they are pushing against the truth of the history in this country.
Sure.
And claiming that it makes white people feel sad.
Yeah, but I feel like for some reason it's a victim of bad marketing. CRT, critical race theory. I feel like the whole nomenclature of it sort of just scares them.
Let me stop you right there. We could have called it Sesame Street History Lessons. It would still be bad marketing, because the minute the Republicans got it, they're trying to do Sesame Street History Lessons and it's killing our children. They're using Sesame Street to poison the minds. It didn't matter. We could have called it ABC Blue. Whatever we called it, is the minute they found out we were trying to get the truth out, they were going to have a problem with it, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you call it. You can take anything. Think about the phrase social justice warrior.
Right.
They turned that into a negative. The same way it was a new term for N-word lover. There's always a way to make something sound negative. We lost him. He'll be back.
He'll be back. Yeah, I see him.
There's always a way to make something sound negative. So critical race theory never had a market, because it's been around since the 70s.
Yeah.
You know what? And so they found it and they decided to make it negative. You say something with a sneer on your face over and over again, it becomes negative. So it wasn't bad marketing. It's that they found it and decided to set it on fire and run around in a circle with it faster than the Democrats could react to it. And the Democrats always try to react in such a moderate and less calm down kind of way, while they let their counterparts across the aisle just act a whole fool. They've been doing that wrong for the last 30, 40 years too. Same thing with defund the police. They could have explained that faster and said, let's change the way we work. Let's change the way the police work. But even that, if they had said, they're trying to change the police, it still would have been, if you want somebody to be scared, you say it with fear in your voice. They're trying to change the police. They're coming for your gun. They're coming for you. All of this is going to be fear, because people want to be scared. It gives them something to focus their anger on.
Yeah.
Do
you think white guilt is just underneath it all? They really know what they have done, and they just don't want to be faced with it, and they don't want it recycled to their offspring? Like, what's underneath the pushback to just teaching the truth? There is a case in Texas right now, what's going on, where this particular school district, they have some of the faculty had issues with the Holocaust, and they said, well, if we're going to teach the Holocaust, we need to teach some opposing views to, balance it out. I don't know what it is an opposing view to the Holocaust to begin with. Let me see if I can add him on here, because let's see here. There we go. He'll be back on. So
there have been Holocaust deniers here and there over the last 50 some odd years that have said it never happened. It's been grossly grossly exaggerated. It wasn't that many people. It wasn't that bad. The same way you hear people say, it wasn't that many slaves. We didn't beat them. They're making all that up. There's always people that want to deny what happened because it just sounds bad. So that is a form of white guilt, but I think what we're seeing more now is not so much guilt, but resentment. They resent the idea that they will lose their place.
Sure.
And it's funny because we teach children to share and they don't want to share. It is exactly that. I don't want to share a top place with you. I don't want to see you doing what I'm doing. I don't want to see you drinking out of the same, tub of, champagne that I'm drinking out of. How dare you move next to me when I thought that this was an exclusive neighborhood? How dare you be able to afford exclusivity? How dare you be for people, Black folks and Hispanic and Native Americans still getting harassed in first class like you're not supposed to be here. Yeah. How dare you achieve anything? And it's that resentment that we're seeing more so than guilt. And so if they can continue to keep the fullness of history from being known, they can continue to feel justified in their resentment. If the fullness of history comes out, then their resentment looks like assholery.
Sure.
Then you have nothing to resent because you haven't lived enough. Hey,
I'm
Do you see
sorry.
him? Is he
I'm
back?
going to claim technological boomerism.
Did he jump back on or no?
He's here.
I'm
I don't see him.
technically Generation
Mine's
X,
like a little bit slow for
but
you guys, so
that
we'll
was a
be on
definite
shortly.
Zoomer moment.
Well, yeah,
So I
So
apologize, folks.
he's back. You see him? I see
no,
him.
I don't see him at all.
I
He said
don't see.
his technology had a boomer moment. He had a.
Oh, he had a boomer moment. Okay, well I don't see him. Maybe he'll jump back on shortly. Let me try him again here. He's already on. Let's see here. Well, he'll jump on at some point, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So I don't see him.
I just don't see Jermaine yet, like I saw him before. So I think I'm probably just sinking into the feed again.
So, but let me move on with that. The identity of is this all built on them losing who they are in society? Is that like all a part of it? Like, I just don't understand the pushback. Like, what is their reasoning for it aside from white guilt?
So you're hitting on something very, very volatile here. Losing who they are in society.
Okay.
Yes. And so now this is going to piss off a lot of people. I might lose all my clients. I see you, Tom. He's gonna see you in a second.
Okay.
And so are they losing their identity, their position in society? So their identity as a monolithic whole, because there's a lot of people that don't feel like this, and I don't want to say they all do, but a significant portion, specifically more so in the older generations than the younger generations, and people that identify as white. They're part of that identity is absolutely and inextricably tied to the idea that white is superior, white is centric, Eurocentric visions of beauty, the idea that white people are just better for some reason, that there must be some genetic reasoning why they tried for years with science to prove that white was better, prettier, smarter, faster, stronger, meant to lead, meant to rule, should be in charge. All of that is tied up with being white. If you take away the white supremacy, all you have left is European American. European American is no better than African American or Asian American or Hispanic American. You're just another regular ass American. You take away the white supremacy, now you got to compete, and you got to compete with people that have been having to do twice as much as you for the last 100 years, and you might not can run as fast, homeboy. And so there's a lot of pressure on them to maintain white supremacy so they can keep that level of comfort and ease that they have.
I feel like a lot of their identity is built on exclusion.
Yes, country clubs.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if I can't let you in, it makes where I am a lot sweeter. I mean, I might give you access. You might be invited. You might be adjacent, but you'll never be one of us.
Right.
And I feel like all of these things that they're doing now is just to hold that in place because they see them slipping. They see
even amongst themselves.
Yes.
Yes.
And they're trying to open, because they did this not too long ago, where they just tried to open the tent as to what whiteness is. You know what I'm saying? It's more of a mental thing as opposed to the color of your skin. Because back in the day, a lot of the immigrants weren't considered white people.
Irish,
Exactly.
Italian,
Exactly.
Polish, absolutely not.
Yeah, they had to open the tent, if you would, just to maintain their superior status.
Now, ask me why they did. Ask me why they opened the tent.
Why did they open the tent, Joy?
Numbers.
That's
Absolutely.
If you maintain the numbers.
How is it, let me ask you this, Thomas, how is it so easy for immigrants to buy into their platform, their agenda, when if you just look at it on just the surface, it doesn't really behoove them? The laws that they put in place don't really advance them as a people. But why do you find a lot, especially in Texas, a lot of Latin people siding with the Republican agenda, siding with the more conservative issues?
Well, I think it's a complex question, but for me, one of the things that occurs to me is that in Latin culture, and I don't like to paint broad brushes, but the idea of a strong, will-oriented man dominating an opponent was a really strong factor in Trump's appeal. It wasn't even so much of,
but does he have to be white?
Well, but again, I think it speaks
first you got to remember that Portuguese and the Spanish invented white, then come back and have this conversation.
Right.
Okay.
And I think to the question is, I think it's a two-part thing. There's a dichotomy. I'm here, I'm legal, I'm established, and I'm otherizing people who didn't do what I did. They didn't take the steps that I took. And so they are lesser just by default because I did what I was supposed to do. And even to the extent of people who were called out, active duty service members who ended up not having documentation, getting sent away to other countries after years of service, after marrying an American wife and bearing 4 or 5 American kids. And they found themselves on the opposite end of the question and are stunned and surprised that the blanket of whiteness did not actually cover them in the way that they imagined that it possibly would. And when you look at other cultures who also have distinct challenges with Black people, and again, no broad brushes, but when you look at some Asian cultures, it's even a matter of, you know, just centuries, millennia long inherent xenophobia. And then they come over here and it's like, we want to preserve our culture and we want to keep pieces of our culture sacrosanct. And so we don't even need to feel a need to embrace anything other than what will advance our cause. And if you know that whiteness is closer to better in this country, and you know that capitalism is closer to better in this country, you're going to center your efforts on things that allow you to assimilate, at least monetarily and social status wise, to advance your own thing. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have to speak to anybody who doesn't speak Korean in this country, you'd be fine. You'd be real cool with that.
In their home countries, is Blackness considered less than? And
well, you also have to remember, what do they know about Black in their countries? What are they seeing? They're seeing media from the United States, media from the UK. What movies do you think they're watching in Korea, in Japan?
So it's not just homegrown. They're being influenced by what they're seeing on television over there too.
Well, but also you got to remember, Black service persons were in those theaters. Black service persons served in the Korean War. Some of them left children there. Black service persons served in the Vietnam War. Some of them left children there. There are generations of mixed race children, offspring of Black American entanglements on the continent. And you best believe outside of Yasuke, centuries and centuries and centuries ago, it ain't too many Black folks. Yeah, it's in Japan, we are Kokojin. We aren't even Gaijin, we are Kokojin. So they make a differentiation from the westernization of us, specifically on our skin color. And again, there's with everything in this world, people embrace, accept Black cultural significance in movies, in music, in sports, while also simultaneously in their brains holding disparaging thoughts about our status and intellectual capacity, about our ability to be contributors to society outside of those narrow slices in which they find us indispensable. And so that's really part of the challenge with us worldwide exporters of culture and worldwide beneficiaries of the worst sort of degradation, lowered expectations, and neglect, especially on our own continent, where they came in, stripped the resources, maintained a horrible European hegemony over so many countless different tribal cultures that had existed for centuries before those incursions, and ultimately resulted in the fracturing of the true strengths of what we always held on the continent as our ground principles of universality of Black experience.
So racism is just in the soil of this country and the world.
It's not just, it's the world. It's not just
it's the world.
So so outside of media and movie theaters and, you know, visual, what we'll say like movies and music and etc. The number one perpetrator of the misinformation, specifically around the continent of Africa, wait for it, National Geographic.
Oh,
are you serious?
National Geographic issued a mea culpa, I want to say probably now about 7 or 8 years ago, because they admitted
them right now.
Now this is where it gets really interesting, because they admitted that they put forward images that were disparaging to the entire continent of Africa. They never put forth the beauty and the family and the humanity. They put forth women in grass skirts with long breasts. Why? Because titties sell magazines. And they could get away with it as being an academic examination, but they also knew that titties sell magazines and they needed readership, but they were putting forth this idea of an entire continent bigger than the United States, bigger than Australia, of just
Living in the jungle.
With no language, no understanding. They're all in the jungle. They're rudimentary. They have no civilization. They're all just wearing grass skirts, living in grass huts with no infrastructure, no roads, no nothing. And this is what people to this day still believe about Africa. And National Geographic perpetuated that image across the world.
Generations.
People are always having jaw-dropping moments when they see the metropolitan and the industry that's going on right now. And they're like, really?
Right. Y'all got cars and cable?
Yeah.
I mean, but how many white people do you think know that the Ghanaian cedi is a stronger currency than the US dollar? Can we get into that conversation? Because again, you have a situation where, you know, Nigeria is oil rich. South Africa is so attractive that the Boers came in and took over it for the better part of a century and decided they were going to set up their own little Club Med down there. You have Botswana with diamonds. You have the Congo with untapped mineral wealth that has been exploited for generations. Kenya with coffee, You go across the entire continent. Egypt, just from a cultural impact alone. Mali, Libya, every piece of that country has a story of value to tell, not the least of which is our own Liberia, which unfortunately has been plagued with a lot of ills over the generations because of the repatriation exploits of the administration back then that tried to solve what they considered to be the Black problem by just shipping them all back to a place that wasn't even necessarily where they were from. So we have so many inherent challenges on the racism front globally. It is almost impossible to quantify. And the lies that are continued to be perpetrated about the continent and therefore, by extension, all people with some melanin in them is the fundamental challenge that we face as a society, really in the globe today. Because until we can accept and promote the humanity of Black people, there is no way we are going to be able to get around all of the various other entanglements and threads that we have as we deal with each other culturally across cultural bounds, because we are always the bottom.
Well, people just don't understand, and I tell people this all the time, there is an economy to keeping people oppressed. People have made millions in someone's oppression and keeping their voices stifled and otherizing them, as you just mentioned. So I feel like because that's interwoven into it all, the conversation, it's just going to be a hard thing to ever say that we are going to live in a very non-racist society. It's like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's just something to aspire to, but it's never going to happen, at least in my opinion.
So I deal with corporate a lot, and I challenge people all the time because I deal with like HR and compensation, et cetera, et cetera. And I always ask the question, what is your policy on sharing salary amongst your employees? And some companies still have this outdated idea, you know, well, they are not allowed to share their salaries, you know, and if they share it, it's a grounds for termination. Why? Well, we don't want to share that. Why? Why would you fire? Why would you fire someone for telling somebody what they made? Because you don't want them to know. Because if they get together and say, "Oh, you making this? I'm making this. Well, we should all be making that." Now you got to pay everybody the same, which means paying a little bit more. That is another tool of oppression. Is keeping people from talking to each other. Worse yet, I'm not going. If I hear that you are telling somebody what you made, I'm gonna rat you out. Especially if I'm making more, because I don't want you to know. And all of this is how you end up having people turn on each other. Now, to take it from a micro to a macro scale, you got other oppressed people turning on each other in order to allow the people in charge to stay.
And that's the goal. That's
the goal.
Exactly. Let's move on to the political spectrum here in these United States.
Mm.
There are a lot of grumblings about VP Harris right now. Some people are just ride or dying with her. Some people are like, I need you to make a little bit more noise. Are you guys happy with her right now, or is it fair to give her an assessment? Are we putting too much on her because she is the first woman of color to have that position? I'm just hearing various schools of thought as to where she should be ranked as far as what her duties are. What say you about how she's doing right now, Joy?
I'll go first.
Yeah, you will.
Are you happy?
Am I happy?
Yeah.
I almost knocked my whole thing over. I feel like I'm in an arranged marriage. I'm getting what I expected. My bar was pretty low.
Okay.
And this is better, you know, it's better than nothing. It's better than the alternative. And I remember that I was voting very much to not have the alternative. I didn't care who Biden picked as his running mate. I was voting not Trump. That is exactly what I was voting. I was glad it was Biden. I would have taken Yang. I would have taken Bernie. Bernie actually was my first choice. I've been a Bernie girl from day one. He ain't never made it to the final round, so I never got what I wanted. But I'll take
But do
Biden.
you remember yourself having this quandary when Biden was the vice president? Did you feel that way? Did you feel like he should have been doing more when it was Biden as the vice president?
No, because the vice president has always been a relatively empty job.
But it seems like we're wanting more out of her, and I feel like it's because there are a lot of issues that are pressing us as a society.
But I mean, look at what I'm saying. Even now, I didn't expect a whole lot out of her. Even right now, I'm talking about, you know, the election as a whole on a macro scale. I didn't really care what she was doing as long as she wasn't getting in anybody's way. I think that she's doing an all right job for a VP. Could she be taking on more for the communities of color? Probably. Is she doing more than anybody else has ever done?
Will she ever get the marquee issues? I don't think vice presidents get marquee issues, the buzzworthy issues.
Well, she could if she wanted to. I think. Well, hang on. I think that she is playing a very centrist role in order not to alienate anybody before 2024. I think that she is coasting, and so because again, she's trying not to piss off too many people in the middle because she's gonna need them if she makes a run in 2024, and she's also trying not to totally alienate the far left because they don't really have. There's nobody. Who's next? Okay, Ocasio-Cortez ain't ready. She ain't ready to run for president. And so who they got? They got nothing. She's it, you know? So
Thomas.
So
see, and that's how it starts.
I agree. Like, I agree that I wish I knew where she were because I don't see her. Yeah. And I think it was different with Obama and Biden because Obama felt he needed Biden's repartee with his Senate colleagues. Obama felt that he needed Biden as the elder white statesman to kind of smooth over certain things that he was dealing with. And so there were silos and lanes for Biden. Yeah. Kamala Harris, she hasn't created a scandal. But I don't see her carrying any water for Biden on significant issues. I don't see her providing any cover for him. And quite frankly,
I feel like it's strategy, Thomas. I do.
It could be strategy, but playing not to lose is not how you elevate to become the first woman of color as president of this country. That doesn't work.
Well, her foreign policy agenda is going to be hella strong because she's been over there just about the whole time she's been in office. So I feel like that might bode well for her.
It is true. And unfortunately for us as a country, our central issues aren't centered as much in foreign policy as much as they're centered. And let's try to see what we can do to fix what we got. And she's not on that stage right now. And I'm not sure that it's not a cagey political calculation. I feel very confident that she is making cagey political calculations. But there's some tough fights that are going on right now. Right. And she's the president of the Senate. And so maybe she could be exercising a little bit more juice. She's the deciding vote. If it comes down to a split. And so maybe she could be spending a little more time in the Senate trying to press some things or making a name for herself on these January 6th things. That's something where I think she could probably take some ownership that Joe does not want to. I think she could very easily step in and say, I was a senator at that time and my life was threatened and boo, boo, boo. And there are things that I would like to see from her. I'm not dissatisfied. I'm not going to talk down about the sister because, you know, she's no Dan Quayle. Let's be clear. Yeah. But neither is she the revelatory kind of person that I think perhaps we might have liked to have had kind of out the box doing some things. Right. I think had things changed in the way that some of Biden's immediate priorities had been able to be pushed forward and gave her a little more breathing room, I think we might be seeing a different Vice President Harris. But she is where she is. She is who she is.
And the only thing about breathing room, that's just it. Like no president walks into a clean slate. You walk into whatever, you know,
residue,
settling explosion came from before you, and they walked into a full-on fecal festiva, right?
Yeah.
So,
Not the
what are you
fecal
gonna do?
festiva.
I
Yes.
know.
So,
Smell-o-vision going on here.
right. So, I mean, they got so many fires to fight on so many fronts. Just keep up. Like, there's laws that they don't even realize they need to be trying to repeal, that they didn't catch that pass because there was so much going on during the last presidency, the last reign of terror, that, have you even cleaned up everything? And then you got some states out here trying to create Gilead over in Texas right now. Y'all, I was in Austin recently. I'm not even lying to you. I'm not even lying to you. I was in Austin and I saw a group that was supporting the new abortion bills, and they were having a celebratory dinner. When I tell you, a bunch of women walked out in all white, like the whole outfit, that is no fucking joke. They're dead serious about that thing. I was like, I got to get the hell up out of here. I don't even know why. I don't live here no more. Why am I here? Like, for real, in Austin. It was happening. I was like, we are days away from Jezebels and Marthas and handmaids up in here.
And that's the perfect segue to my next topic I want to cover with you guys. Are you guys hearing a lot from Black women and this whole abortion debate that's going on? Joy, this is exclusively for you right now. What is the general consensus about Black women and abortion? Or is it like, what are you guys feeling? Because I'm not seeing a galvanized voice from you guys, as opposed to what I'm actually seeing in the media. Are Black women is it pretty much what the Black school of thought is thinking? Like, a woman's body is her own, but I don't want to see it. I don't like abortion. Like, what is the general school of thought with Black women and abortion?
I can't speak to it because I've never had abortion as a key thing for me. It has never been something that I voted specifically on. It has never been the one issue that turned me.
And is that the issue why there's just not a huge outcry or a tone that they're striking? Like, because I just don't understand why Black women are making noise about this.
I think since it became a hot button issue, there's always been something bigger on the radar for Black women other than abortion. So, okay, so I'm going to speak again from a issue of privilege. It is a hell of a privilege to only have to worry about abortion.
A single issue, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To only have to worry about a single issue. When people say, I'm just going to vote my wallet, that is a hell of a privilege to be able to do that. And Black women specifically, we ain't never had that kind of privilege. We go on to vote, but we got to worry about our brother, our cousin who's in jail, our mama who's on welfare or Medicaid, our uncle who can't get insurance, our kids who are in public school. We got a lot of shit to think about going into the voting booth. Abortion doesn't even hit our radar, So more often, which is why we're such a solid voting block, generally speaking, in this age for Democrats, because all of that social services stuff hits our radar as more important than the one issue.
Well, we vote more out of what's going to kill us the least. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like abortion
less likely to die with the Democrats. Today.
Yeah. The whole progressive movement and the Black electorate, what is the disconnect there, Thomas? Like, why can we not seem to latch on to anything that they present us? Do we feel like it's pie in the sky? Or have they just not reached out to us in the way that we want to hear? Why can we not find the same page with them?
Well, I think one of the things that I just observationally consider is who are the avatars of the progressive movement? We don't have, we have Presley, who is in the squad, but look at the composition of the other elements of the squad. You've got Tlaib, you've got Ilhan, and you've got AOC.
Right.
And then you've got Presley. And so
Ilhan Omar. Yeah.
Ilhan Omar. And then you got Bernie on the other side, octogenarian white guy. And so you don't see, although there are some progressive voices, especially in some of the two gentlemen that just got elected in New York, Mondare and Richie Torres, those are Black facing. But again, they've also got the intersectionality of LGBTQ, which isn't something that immediately resonates with the broader Black population. So we don't have is some people from that old school, all of our old school civil rights avatars, Clyburns, the John Lewises who just passed, all of that era, the Al Sharptons, that is old school. And these
Okay.
new progressives, these new younger people, the millennials, et cetera, who are looking for progressive causes aren't really seeing those firebrands in the political space. You've got a lot of social media influencers who are doing things,
Sure.
you know, the DeRay McKissicks and all of that sort of thing. But as far as people who can be elected, people who are elected and championing these causes, you've got a real generational divide between the old school 60-plus-year-old fighters who are used to a certain way of advocating for civil rights, and then the younger people on the I don't give a fuck vibe who are like, well, this is what needs to happen for me right now. This is what I'm facing right now. And you're not seeing, I don't think, enough Black progressive elected voices for a millennial Black progressive to project themselves onto. And so the more we can get politically engaged, I mean, the closest thing we probably have is Stacey Abrams, and she ain't even in office.
Sure.
She
you
could have
think that
been, but she isn't.
Do you think that the rank and file Black and brown voter, do we embrace the moniker liberal, or do we reject it but understand that our cause is a lot more moderate? Like, what do we brand our politics as? Because I can't, for some reason, I just can't think of my granddad describing his politics as being liberal. I feel like they're more moderate or in the middle.
But we're not a monolith, and that's the thing. I think the Democratic Party has.
But we vote.
Well, we do, but see, here's the thing. This is part of the challenge. You saw in the 2020 election more fracturing, more Black men going to Trump. Not enough to be a majority or anything like that.
Yeah,
but
it moved the needle. Yeah,
but it moved. I mean, you're moving from 12% from 8%. That's not an insignificant amount.
But there was a lot baked into that, Thomas. I feel like
there
was a lot more patriarchy and misogyny.
But see, again, it speaks to your reasoning about Black people and whether or not we are more progressive versus moderate. There are still patriarchal things in our cultural past. The dad is the head of the household, all those sorts of things. Papa was a Rolling Stone. There's a whole bunch of stuff layered into the Black male experience that needs to be unpacked for even Black men to heal in and of themselves. But
that kind of takes us back to Chappelle. But
it takes us right back to Chappelle. And so I think the generational divide is critical here. I think from the 30s, the 34s and unders, I think it's much easier. They're much more prone to label themselves progressives. People of my generation and, of course, my parents' generations, although they would be Democratic, they still definitely hold what I would consider to be more conservative social ideas as opposed to criminal justice or taxation or whatever ideas. So it's a challenge.
Do you see the Progressive Party just being more, or the progressive facet, I should say, of the Democratic Party, being more strategy to keep us ever reaching for more, as opposed to becoming complacent with what we have? You think that would be the idea as to why they exist? Because they do sort of like, they inflame us a little bit. And we understand that what they're presenting out there is going to take a long time to get to. But at the same time, it keeps our minds open. It keeps us reaching. So would you say that might be their purpose, or no?
Well, I don't know if it's their purpose, but I do think it is a side effect.
Okay.
I don't know if they meant to do it, but they absolutely are doing it. And I think that it bleeds over into popular culture as well. I think, you look at my baby, Lil Nas X, just out here cutting up. And I love it. I love every minute of it. But it's indicative of how people are like, you know what, I'm not going to be quiet. And you can't make me be quiet. And you can kiss my whole glittery pink ass if you want to. Like this whole idea of I will not be silenced in any way. In addition to not just our monolith of being Black Americans who won't be silenced, but then within that, I don't want to say queer because there are people even within the LGBTQ community that hesitate with that word. But I'm L, I'm G, I'm B, I'm T, I'm Q, I'm I, I'm A, I'm plus, I'm this. And I won't be silenced either. And I have specific issues that I want to see met. And I'm not hearing anything about the A community in LGBTQIA. Where are we? Where's my representative? And so that fracturing, also lends itself towards a progressive platform. Where am I? Everybody wants to see themselves. And I think it's beautiful, but I also think that it can be, and this is going to sound harsh, it can be distracting from the larger group that needs to push forward. And it's one of the, but it's hard to hear. How do you tell someone as you're asking them to join you in a bigger struggle, we'll get to you? That sounds real patronizing, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing that everyone has been struggling with. When you gonna get to me? I've been waiting on you to get to me forever. You know, so
I just don't, they often come with the rub. You know, we understand and, you know, what they're doing sounds really wonderful and I would be for it. But even when I hear what they're presenting or the way they're going to hold up the vote unless this is met, I'm always rubbed by it because I feel like it's just a little bit out of touch with who we are as a people, especially us as Black folk. Like I just mentioned earlier, when we vote, we're voting out of survival, you know, and I just feel like what they're presenting right now, yes, it would be nice, but let me make sure that I got some food on the table and then we'll get to this. And I feel like that oftentimes. To your point
earlier, that's why I like the uber progressives, because if we say, you know, let me just get to the point where we get some food on the table, we'll sit there and get fat and forget that we still got to keep pushing. We need them beating on the door like, don't forget about us. We need them constantly keeping us uncomfortable so that we remember there's more to be done. There's always more to be done.
You mentioned Lil Nas X, and this, you guys, you just keep making my job easier. These segues are just beautiful. The Black gay man uprising. I was with a group of friends last night. We get together and we play games and we eat as all gay, Black gay men. And I brought up this conversation because I wanted to know the consensus of what they thought. You have the Billy Porters, you have Lil Nas X, and then you have Don Lemons.
Wait,
Lil Nas X, Billy Porter.
Did I not know that?
Worldwide, everybody knows who they are.
You didn't know that Don Lemon was out? Oh yeah, he's been out. He got a whole white husband.
Well, it's common knowledge. The elaborateness, the over-the-topness of who they are as performers, personalities, does that make for an easier digestion with straight Black people, Thomas, or is it the exploitation of them? Because I mean, as much as I'm glad they're out there, I'm bothered that they happen to be the face, but they're not all that we are as Black gay men. So,
well,
is it easier digestion for straight people, or what is that?
Well, for my part, I can say that as a straight Black man, I don't have any challenge with any of the depictions, but I think it's interesting that someone like Coleman Domingo, for instance, isn't being held up as an avatar of Black queerness.
That's
and when rub. It's interesting, you know, when they made some revelations about his character on Fear the Walking Dead, that kind of came, I think, a little bit out of left field. And he's been cast in the Bayard Rustin biopic, which I don't know that I think he really looks like Bayard, but that's okay. But it certainly does seem that Billy Porter has, you know, just from Pose, in which he was remarkable, and even in the Cinderella thing that they did, where he was all... Billy Porter does the damn thing. I mean, he is. You didn't like the Cinderella man.
Cinderella was trash, son.
Okay, my God.
I liked the girl.
It was a syrup bucket.
I liked the girl and I liked her songs. That's all I'll say. But Billy, to me, in that role, he was basically just doing the same thing he's been doing on red carpets for the last 3-4 years. So so I do think it probably is more comfortable for the broader heterosexual population to be able to box in somebody like Lil Nas X, who once he did come out, was forced out, like truly embraced like what a lot of people I think would find to be a stereotypical depiction of a, you know, with the sparkles and the pink and the big hair and those sorts of things, the fringe and the baby thing when he was birthing his album. I think that notion of
I lost your audio.
Yeah, we lost your audio.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Okay, am I back?
I got you now. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, so you think about things like some of the depiction of Black queer life in a show like Oz, which was very different than somebody that is less challenging than Billy Porter or Lil Nas X.
But I feel like it's those sort of storylines that sort of, there's a lot more of a humanizing to those storylines because those are the things that I don't know. I just feel like the whole exploitation of it, the phantasmagorical, if you will, that just buys into the disdain, the underlying disdain that they've always had for us.
Right.
And
you look at Omar off The Wire as a depiction. That's a very real character.
Exactly.
You know?
And those are characters they don't want to understand is real, but I feel like they help move the needle in terms of acceptance as to who is really gay in your community. They don't have to be the ones that you see coming down the street.
You ain't always going to be able to whoop a gay dude's ass. You need to understand that too, right? Because that's also something that I also think makes a particular type of heterosexual man feel comfortable, is that he always feels he can win that fight. Nah, bruh, you can't. I know a whole lot of dudes that work out a lot and that are military and that will lay you out.
And I feel like it's stories like that that move us forward, and they just often, maybe they're just not as interesting enough to depict on, you know, media or in movies and television, but
media's always going to love the Flash, and you got all Flash with Billy. I love Billy Porter, and first off, I love his style. And I'm gonna throw Tajik Hall in there in the middle of it too, because I think a precursor to some of the things we see from a video standpoint with Lil Nas X, you got to give credit to, what was it, I Like Boys, Tajik Hall's video. That was like the first in recent times that I was like, I like boys too, and I'm loving this video, son. Like it was awesome. But the idea of him being, I'm not sure exactly how to categorize Tajik. Because he is not a drag queen, but he will dress in drag.
He's more impersonation to me.
He's impersonation, but he's an excellent entertainer. His music is really good, very catchy and stuff. He's a club kid, you know, but also just depicting male dancers the way you're so used to seeing female dancers, barely clothed, oily body, etc. And I was like, yes, I'm waiting on this my whole life. Thank you.
There was an article in USA Today this past April that said because of the pandemic, it fueled more diversity in Hollywood than any time before. What do you think changed that they would make such a conclusion? Because I am noticing there are a lot more stories of Black people on television, and I'm noticing the stories are a lot more varied. I watched this Yaya DaCosta-led show. What was that? DaCosta?
Our Kind of People.
And it was, I mean, although that's a life I can only read about because I don't know too many Black people who hang out on the vineyard on the coast like that. It's just beautiful to know that we exist in those spaces and those stories can be told.
Absolutely.
What do you think that the pandemic did for Hollywood to automatically just want to just bring our stories to the screen like that? Like, what do you think changed? Was it us being out in the streets and like, wait a minute, these people have a voice and people are paying attention to them, so let's lean into it? What do you think? I
think it was a couple of things. One of the things that immediately comes to mind is that when major studios had some challenges in getting their product out into the marketplace and they were pushing back dates, it opened up slots. And when you have outlets like Netflix and Amazon who can stream immediately with low risk, you're not dealing with theaters, you're not dealing with some of the complications that normally go with traditional media distribution of content. Netflix got stacks on stacks on stacks on stacks on stacks of Black-led films that they're just waiting to decide whether or not they're going to throw it out there. And so when you have outlets like that between Hulu and Amazon Prime and Netflix and Apple TV, because The Banker came out, it was pre-pandemic, but it was also kind of in the lead up to the response to George Floyd and some of the Black Lives Matter stuff. And I don't know if you've had a chance to see it, but it's actually an excellent film, mostly truthful with the same variations that they always do, but telling the story of a Black banker who, with a partner and a white front, were actually able to purchase and run a bank in Texas that empowered Black people to buy mortgages. So I think it is where major media corporations have an opportunity to be perceived as doing the right thing and being on the right side of a conversation with low risk, that they have taken those chances. And part of that, I think, was a resolve to Black Lives Matter. But lack of content, I think, played a big role. So, Joy, going ahead with your finger up. I saw you.
Also, don't forget that everything that he just said, I want to add one more venue, and that was YouTube. Because people was just putting stuff out on YouTube. Right. It was a free-for-all. Let's not forget Issa Rae started with Awkward Black Girl on YouTube.
That's right.
Cobra Kai started out on
YouTube Red.
And so people started, when they were looking for content, they started scrolling through what's out here, and YouTube was its own focus group. How many likes, how many views is this stuff getting? Let's go talk to these people and see what they about. And so people were self-producing and throwing stuff out on YouTube. And it was the easiest way to see what sticks, because they already got 600,000 views, 2 million
They
views.
were vetted somewhat before they decided to put,
Exactly.
Wow.
And it became a proving ground of sorts, and people could get picked up, you know, without any risk whatsoever to the studio.
It's just like, this whole movie of the week that just won't seem to end, the whole Gabby Petito thing.
Man.
Oh.
Do you think white women are seeing the light in this, or there's just pretty much an isolated incident, as they usually paint things as? Like
1,000 isolated instances.
No, you know what I'm saying?
They have too much Karen eyeshadow on to open their eyes.
Really?
Right.
I mean,
well, here's the thing. I always hesitate to have this conversation because it's so easy to get into fragility around this, because a woman has died. You never want to take away from that. And the conversation that we keep trying to have, it keeps getting derailed, is I think the coverage that she got, aside from the after effects, like once everything was resolved, okay, we done with this. But I think the coverage that was had when she was missing was appropriate. What we're saying is we want that kind of coverage for everyone. Sure. When a person goes missing, don't assume because she's Black that she probably was hooking or, you know, just out in the streets. Don't assume if they're Native that we just don't know where they went and whatever. Don't assume that they're a drug addict or dealer or, you know, went with their pimp or their boyfriend or whatever. Don't assume that they'll just wander home later. Assume that they're missing like you did for her. Exactly. And that's what we've been asking for decades, and they never do it. And so the hypocrisy of it all was very easy to see. Once again, you know, the way we remember all these white women's names. And again, we should remember everybody's names like that.
Sure.
You know, and so I think that's what we've been asking for. And it always turns around in the middle of that conversation. Why do you not care that she's dead? I do. I want you to care about other people as much as you want me to care about her. You know,
which brings us right back to Chappelle, because honestly, if the Gabby Petito thing had broken before he had recorded this show, you know damn well it would have been a part of the conversation. That disparity that Joy was talking about.
The biggest rub is gonna come if they ever find this guy, if he's not somewhere dead, the defense they're gonna mount on his behalf. I feel like
he killed a white woman.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I feel like that right there might be the flashing point. I don't know. I'm hoping. I always think it never ends up being anything.
911 is invented for white women. You going to jail. You kill a white woman, you going to jail. That's what it is.
You think so?
Yes. No, it's a real thing. 911 was invented behind an incident, I want to say in New England, I can't remember which state, where a woman was murdered and people heard things going on, but they called, you know, the police, but there was no hotline. And because they couldn't get to her fast enough, they created a hotline, and it was 911.
Last point, guys, we need to bring this train on in. Tarana Burke, she has a book out, and I've been reading it. It's called Unbound, and she chronicles her trajectory of being sexually assaulted as a child and in the workplace, and it being like the starting point for the whole Me Too movement. Where the movement stands right now, do you feel like it's been hijacked a little bit? Do you think where we are with the Me Too, do you think like that was her point, her intention, or she just pretty much went along for the ride, just knowing that she's just going to salvage whatever she can out of it? Because I got to be honest with you guys, it's made for a very tightrope culture. It really has. Even we're all from Texas. We have sensibilities that just lends itself to just being nice. And they can be misconstrued now. And I just don't like being in my head as much as I have been as a result of this whole movement. Do you find yourself sort of having the conversation in your head before you have it with women, Thomas? Or where are you?
Well, let me preface this by saying that I had the honor and privilege of working with Tarana Burke while I was facilitating a simulcast. She was at the Oscars and was scheduled to make a presentation at the Oscars, but she was also a part of a presentation in Australia. And so I, with a colleague, set up something in a hotel across the street from where she was supposed to be so that we could do this Australian thing on the other side of the country, on the other side of the world, right before she was about to step in. So I have been able to speak with her personally, and so that informs my response a little bit more. I will say this, during the era of COVID especially, so the last year and a half, frankly, I just haven't had to have very many interactions with women outside of the women that are in the house with me, and also the women that I work with. And I have never been a person who has been that madman, hey, Toots, you're looking kind of great today kind of guy. So even when I give a compliment, I tend not to focus on the physical, and that's just not me trying not to do that as much as it is about just the way my mother and father raised me. So it's not a particular challenge for me. I understand how
but that's an exaggeration. I'm talking about something simple and empty.
Well, but I'm saying, like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Mamet play Oleana, and they turned it into a movie as well. But that was like the hyper weaponization of basically white female fragility / insecurity, where a student took a comment that a professor made and spun it into an allegation of rape. And so to that point, I think that there is, I don't think that the kind of the big cultural touchstones about Me Too, and I'm going to use R. Kelly and Bill Cosby, are examples of things going too far. I think that's accountability. I think perhaps there are some instances, I don't think Mario Cuomo or Andrew Cuomo, whoever the one who just fell, I don't think that is an instance of hypersensitivity. I think those were dudes who were doing some crass shit that needed to be addressed. But I think perhaps when there is space for people who deal with things on a much more just lower, I'm not in the public spotlight, I don't have to be particularly culturally aware, and they may do things that are legitimately interpreted as problematic by women. And there, I think there's space for a conversation so that they can be made aware of the wrong that they're doing. Women can be made aware of empowering themselves and being able to speak out when things happen to them that they aren't comfortable with. I just don't think that where Me Too has become commoditized, I don't think that it's the fault of the Tarana Burks of the world. I think it's the fault of the media. And I would rather lay blame at their feet because, to your point, I think Ms. Burke is still very interested in having the overriding message of Me Too, which is sexual assault happens, it happens way too much, and women are not empowered enough to protect themselves, their bodies, and their mental health in the culture in which we live.
But you can't deny, even when it goes sideways, it's still projected onto what she started. You can't deny
No,
that.
absolutely. And that's to the media. But she can't take control because she did not control the levers of media that allowed it to become exploited in that way. So I think her earnestness in starting and sharing her story as a way for women, and Joy, please jump in on this. I don't want to be the two dudes who just talk about Me Too all day long. But I think that her legitimacy is still real, present, necessary, and important. And what it has become, especially where it has become hijacked by people who perhaps were never intended to hijack it for their own purposes, is where the problem lies. It's not with Tarana Burke. To me.
Do you deal with these issues, Joy, in your practice, or is it just pretty much all racial recognition?
No, I do everything.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm complete diversity. I do all demographics, and so I've talked to men about this specifically when they, to your point, they're feeling a little bit hesitant. They're like, I'm afraid to give a compliment. And I was like, all you got to do is ask. So instead of just giving the compliment, do you mind if I give you a compliment? She could say no. And then if she says yes, there was an agreement there that you were going to say a compliment. Now, if you say, do you mind if I give you a compliment? And the next one is nice rack. You didn't mess up. Or, you say, you look really nice and dressed. Okay, then she understands you were just trying to give a compliment. You've given that understanding ahead of time.
Right.
So there's no misunderstanding there. And it's just as simple as saying, do you mind if I ask you how to pronounce your name? Do you mind if I ask you what your pronouns are? All of these things are asking permission to engage in a different way. Do you mind if I give you a compliment? It's just that simple. Anything beyond that, what are you really asking for? You know, do you mind if I touch you? Why are you trying to touch her? So generally speaking, the place where people feel a little questionable is if they want to say something nice about somebody and they're not sure how it's going to be taken. Do you mind if I give you a compliment? Solves all of that. Now, going on to the whole Me Too thing, I would rather have everyone err on the side of caution and use that phrase, do you mind if I give you a compliment? And see more people being able to stand up for themselves or stand up for others and talk about the sexual assault that is still continuing on, because it is still continuing. Between the time that Tom started and stopped talking, 5 more women got assaulted in this city alone. So it is still a very serious problem day in and day out, you know, even by people that they know. So I would rather y'all be a little uncomfortable and add that one question into your vocabulary than us say that the movement needs to die because it makes too many people uncomfortable. I'd rather err that way. Y'all can ask, do you mind if I give you a compliment?
That's right.
Last point of this wonderful Hot Topics episode we're having, guys. The labor industry is striking like you wouldn't believe right now. John Deere, Kellogg, they're even getting ready to possibly strike out here. The crew in Hollywood. We don't know if it's going to happen. We'll know by the end of the night. They're going to end up not showing up to work tomorrow. What was it about the pandemic that opened up their eyes and steeled their spine to just resist in the manner that they are? Did they blatantly see how they were being treated and how uneven the game was last year?
Yes.
Like, what happened? Like, what were the specifics that led these people to demand a better quality of life and take these hard driven positions that they're taking right now?
It was the pause.
Either one of you guys.
It was the pause in the constant pain. You know, like, you know how you might walk with a limp, or you got a pain in your back and you don't recognize it until you sit down for a minute and then you stand up. It's like, but you've been walking that way for days. You know, you don't realize it until you have a pause, a succession of pain for a while. And then when you get back into it, the pain is unbearable. I can't do this no more. And so everybody,
what did they experience? I mean, like, because I don't understand what was so revelatory. The fact that they were putting their lives at risk, going to work, risking getting sick, or
it was the callousness with which their employers told them to take their ass back to work for this $12 an hour, with no knowledge of whether they were going to live or die. It put it in very plain terms. I don't care about you, your life, your family. Come schlep this stuff for craft services for whatever menial minimum wage we're about to give you, or not, or stay home, or you're gonna lose your job. And people was like, I'll lose my job then. I can make body butter and sell it on the internet and make more money doing that.
Because there has been a shift in the way that people are what they're deciding what's a better quality of life for them. Right. I've never noticed, and even within my own circle, I've had so many friends who are like, I'm just gonna do something different. Yeah, I'm gonna take a pay cut, but I got to be happy now.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand what it was about the pandemic that gave them those revelations.
Well, people are recognizing that happiness has no price.
And I think too, for those who were able to get, like, either their employer had a PPE loan or whatever, and they were actually getting money and they weren't worried about material needs, had, to Joy's point, they had a time to breathe and say, wait, okay, so I'm not in this hamster wheel. I'm paying my bills. So what can I do with my time? Where can I find my bliss? And by the way, to all y'all people who was talking about how much my Big Mac was going to cost when they had to jack the hourly wage up to $15.99. I don't know about y'all, but my Big Macs stay the same price. And they even got them bundles, which are crazy. And I'm seeing all sorts of things, like on my timeline yesterday, some employer said, we were offering $14 an hour for people to come and unpack this stuff, and nobody wanted the job. And so we're unloading 35,000 pounds of stuff, our own selves. And the reply was, so basically what you're saying is you're upset at the wages of the job you offered. Because if you had offered more money, you would have had people helping you with the 35,000 pounds. But meanwhile, it's you two people, because you didn't want to pay anybody what they were actually worth. And so I think people are realizing the gig economy, which is, I think, less than ideal, but people are feeling like I can do what I want to do and I can supplement with what I need to do, instead of feeling my life belongs to this employer. And if I don't give my life to this employer, I'm not a worthy person. And
the free market has bitten the employer in the ass, because now everybody's like, oh, supply and demand, you got all this demand and I'm the supply, I want $18 an hour.
Right.
And they're like, wait, what? Oh, no. You told me that the product is worth what people will pay for it. I'm holding out for a higher price because you are the one demanding it. And so I'm holding out for $18 an hour. And I know restaurants around here in Atlanta that have raised their wage and changed the way they doing tips and stuff now because people were not coming to work. And so they're paying, restaurants are famous for paying below minimum wage and making work tips. Now they're starting to pay minimum wage when people because people weren't coming to work.
Right.
And so it's the way people are doing things now.
It's as if they all crept in the middle of the night to the accountant's office and saw the books.
I know that's
and been
right.
like, wait a minute, you've been cheating me all this time. And then all of a sudden they just decided to just strike out against it and speak against it and just get on these picket lines and demand change. And I'm here for it. I just hope it doesn't happen tomorrow in Hollywood.
Yeah, I don't think that the IATSE strike is actually going to happen. From what I understand, they probably are going to reach an agreement. So good luck, best of luck to those 60,000 employees and all the productions that are needed for them, especially Our Kind of People, which is an excellent program in which I'm trying to make sure I get.
It's not even about the money with them. It's more so about their quality of life.
And benefits. And I mean, there are wage issues bundled into it, especially the lower earning, people in the thing. But I'm just grateful that if the producers actually do come to the table substantively and the union can reach an agreement, those people won't have their wages interrupted. And that is something that is vitally important in this day and age right now for people to actually have the ability to maintain their lives just as things are beginning to get back rolling again. I would hate to see those people compromise and have their situations put at risk. So,
right.
You guys have made this hour and a half everything that I dreamt for. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're just down the street, Mr. Cunningham. Maybe we can have coffee someday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Enjoy in on a Zoom.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a joy.
Enjoy. Thank you so much for turning me on to Tom. This has been a great hot topics, and you guys were just enough of spice and sweet and everything. And so I really appreciate you guys being on.
Thank you so much.
The yin and the yang. Folks, I will see you next week. We have Keith Boykin, political commentator. He's talking about his new book. Hold on. Race Against Time. It's a must-have, folks. So he'll be on the soapbox next week. So please join us, and you guys have a great week. Bye, Thomas. Bye, Joy.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Jermaine.